Skittles. Oh, man. Nope, for me. I'm about to use that.
I figured.
Yeah, I need that. This one's good.
It is good. That's a high divorce rate. Limelight?
Yep,
Dope.
is.
Tasty, man.
Let's see who's going to join us on our live stream today. What's going on, everybody? Let's see. What's up? Welcome for joining. Let me get this thing positioned right. Let me fix this camera. There we go. That works way better. What's going on, everybody? Happy New Year. You guys are all having a great Friday. I'm just chilling in the office, getting some work done. Topic of the day. Don't really have a topic of the day. I just figured, come on, do a live Q&A chat group. I know got a lot of people on the YouTube channel. The YouTube channel's actually been growing pretty steadily. So I like to see that. And it's great because when I do these lives, you guys come in here and you guys talk to each other and stuff and answer questions. And the live Q&As, I usually can smoke. And somebody sent me a little bit of high divorce rate cross to Limelight, which is nice and tasty. Nice and tasty. Somebody actually, Zach Ficklin, sent me a brand new glass piece for the office, but there's no way I'm going to bring it down here because it'll get broke. So I'm going to stand at my house using it as my personal, bro. Look at, he says, oh no, the silicone. But the reason why I have this here at the office is because multiple people smoke down here. And if I had a nice glass piece, just like in the past, all of them have broken. So I'll show you guys the high divorce rate. I'm going to share my screen. Let me pull it up. The parents of it are, I got to find my Dropbox. Where's that Dropbox at? I've got pictures in the Dropbox, and it's really awesome because actually it was featured on High Times, which, speaking of High Times, there is a podcast coming out on their Outlaw series. So I'm going to touch base again. The podcast has already been recorded. Did it I don't know, a month, maybe a month and a half ago. Let's see. On this particular one, I think he needed a little bit better control of his dry. But you can see the structure of it is just it's solid. I told him that he should take more time on the trim so you can get all the little curves and stuff. But this one it reminds me of, it's got that wedding cake vibe, but it also has the Sprite terps. So it's cakey with a very citrusy Sprite is what is on that one. And I really like it. Let me see if I can find that. Let's see, where's my Dropbox? Go to my Dropbox. Hold on, I'm gonna pull this up so you guys I can share it. And I think it's in day one of these photos. Here it is. Right here. All right, so I'm going to pull this up. Let me share my screen real quick. that's not how I want to do it. I have to do it like this. Hold on. Share screen. Wedding. All right. So we're going to go to this one first. Bam, right there. So this, oh no, I want it to be big. What if I remove myself? No, then you won't be able to hear me. Okay, so this was the parent line of the high divorce rate times Limelight. And there's some other pictures on here as well, which are this one, which I really like as well. This is my screensaver on my phone. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful genetics. Originally, this was bred by My Name is Earl, and he's not active on social media anymore. I can't even get a hold of him through email. His name is Peter, but last time I spoke with him, he said that he had Lyme disease and he was getting sick, and so I haven't heard anything after that. I don't know what happened to him. But he bred this, and this is a Wedding Cake BX3 crossed to Miracle Alien Cookie. And then I took this line right here and I crossed it to my Limarilla. No, I crossed it to the Limelight. And the Limelight is Limarilla crossed to Mac V2. And so it's got Wedding Cake, Mac, and Lime. And it usually expresses itself, this line right here, as these like, sometimes it's like Mexican candy Sprite terps. Sometimes it's like more of like a doughy lemon lime, but it's not distinctly lemon. It's not distinctly lime, but it is that like, it is this like sweet citrusy kind of soda pop Sprite terp that is the dominant one in this line. This one was like slept on for a really long time too, and I think it was because I had it listed lower than everything else on my site. For it's sold out now, but when it was up, and it was because I had so many packs of them, so I priced it a lot less expensive, and I think people saw that as like, oh, maybe it wasn't as good. But it was one of my favorites, and I really like it. I actually have a batch of high divorce rate Limelight in my beds right now. So I did some of them. I found 3 of them that I liked everything. And so those are getting run in the big beds or the bigger beds. And I will get some photos and stuff of that on the other YouTube channel, Brandon Russ Grows. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, drop them in the chat. I was just bullshitting around talking about these genetics that I was puffing on. This thing, if you want to take that, Hamilton.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, so high divorce rate, Wedding Cake BX3 crossed to Miracle Alien Cookie, crossed to Limarilla and Mac V2, which is another Miracle Alien. Mac V2, Miracle Alien Cookie version 2. In the phenos that I found, yep, it's all that stuff that I just talked about, though. Orange and Purple Garden says, you just fed your girl some Microbe Plus. You can't wait to pop those Mac Starfighter next rounds. I don't know if you guys are in the Discord, but I posted the mom that I still have that, and I grow that out. I did some last run. So good. So good. Nope, says he ran into problems with a bottom wick system. What would be a dry bag schedule for an auto or photo using living soil and dry amendments in a 5-gallon fabric pot. I severely overwatered 6 days. Yeah, man, overwatering is like, that's the worst of it. Like, out of all of the things that anybody, especially if you're new, that you can do is over water. That is the biggest thing. It is always, this is a pro tip, right? I've been doing this for almost 25 years professionally now in some capacity. And one of the things that I can tell you in my experience, especially with modified medias, cocoa, and peat-based systems, overwatering will, what it does is it basically kills off all those little fine root hairs. And those are what's basically creating the surface area needed for nutrient uptake. So it causes a lot of issues with nutrient uptake and water movement in plants. It is best to err if you're going to guess and you don't know how much water to give something, it's best to err on the side of being dry. Now, this in itself, being too dry, can cause issues with osmotic, pressure on the plant. This stress response from, if you have like too high of an EC because there's not enough water, or if you have too much nutrients in that media, that causes that EC spike when the water decreases, when the amount of available water decreases. So balance is what you want, but it's better to underwater, in my experience, than it is to overwater, because you can always add more water, right? So that's, just pro tip, it's better to underwater. But when you're talking about dryback schedules for living soil, typically what I like to do is kind of run things pretty consistent. And when we're talking about drybacks, we're usually talking about decreasing the amount and frequency of water at certain periods of time. So we're never going under a certain, water threshold. We're just making it so that way, essentially what happens, especially if you've got like good clean water, like I use my well water at my house is really, really clean. When we're talking about water and the amount of nutrients that fall into the solution that the plant ends up taking up, more has the potential to go into that water if there's nothing in that water, if that water is clean to begin with. And so the same thing can be like, let's say you have a solution, right? And at full water capacity, that solution might be, it might be 800 ppm of total dissolved nutrients, available nutrients in that solution. But as that water decreases, right, the solution ppm increases. And so when you're giving less water, the water that they are taking up is typically is going to have a higher quantity of nutrients in it. And so you're not wanting to do it like limit that and keep it consistent. We're just causing basically points in the growth where you're trying to optimize certain types of nutrient interactions and stress responses to elicit certain responses. But typically, for me, it looks like I keep things pretty consistent the first few weeks of flowering. And the reason why I do that is because the first couple of weeks, those plants are kind of like still in a vegetative stage, right? So even though you flipped the time schedule, at that particular point is when they're usually going to be putting on their the most amount of biomass, those first 2 weeks of flowering. And so I usually keep things really consistent. In my veg, I'm, if I'm running, 80 degrees and I'm running 70% relative humidity, I'm typically keeping that same environmental parameters for those first couple of weeks. And I'm not actually like changing those parameters until I kind of get further along into flowering. And those changes are made really slowly, where like I'm increasing the vapor pressure deficit by bringing the temperature and humidity down further into flowering. And some of that, right, can also be done by the way that you water, right? Because if like, especially if you're in beds, right? If you're at, not let's say you're not at field capacity, but you're at like where you're basically optimizing the amount of water because your plants are growing really quick. They're still going through that vegetative cycle, right? And also the amount of water that's in those beds, that equates to more water in the environment, right? As we're decreasing our water usage, it's also going to create less water in the environment as well, in the atmosphere. So the frequency in the watering schedule will, if you were looking at it like on data, right? When you're watering, typically, let's say a whole room or something, you're usually going to see a spike in relative humidity in that room. So to make a schedule, you really want to, it really depended on your environmental parameters, your watering schedules, how much nutrients, because like let's say you're doing like cocoa or something. If you're like, oh, I want to do a hard dry back, you don't want to use the same amount of fertilizer or nutrients, because that can cause stress. So if you were going to do a dry back, you might want to decrease your EC. I mean, that's what I would do. I don't run hydro anymore, but let's see. Bob wants to know, what was the book that I bring with me everywhere? I don't think I have it. It's actually at the office right now. I mean, at the house right now. But is Principles and Applications of Soil Microbiology. Here's a question from the Dank. He says, how many days do you run your Chem D for? I usually run my Chem Dog between about 55 and 60 days. Right around where I kind of run everything. Oh, we got some people watching from Pakistan. Yeah, Shawnee Mac. This is a good, he's got a comment from the comment section here. Says, you don't want to cut that nitrogen right away. They still need that for the stretch, or do a strategic top dress before flipping, knowing they're going to need it. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why typically when I flip, I'm usually hitting with like the complex humate. I like to hit with that complex right at the flip, because I know they're gonna need that if I haven't already added it with the top dress amendment. Here's a question, orange and purple. Can I spray a mix of the Bacillus subtilis and Trichoderma spores in the first 2 weeks of flowering as a powdery mildew preventative? Yes, you can. And the cool thing about the spores, there's no carrier. So if you needed to spray and you were further along in flowering, which I don't like to do, but sometimes it happens. And like if I'm outdoors, I spray all season regardless, just because where I'm at, the insect pressure and the pathogen pressure is just too high not to. It's almost impossible to do outdoor without. You can. And actually, I recommend, depending on when you start to set flowers, in the recommendation, the feed chart recommendation, doing a spray and drench with the Bacillus and Trichoderma, usually at day like 14 to 21, depending on flowering time, because some varieties will flower a little bit longer and they'll take a little bit longer to set, so they'll just be, putting on biomass for those first 3 weeks. Sometimes it's 2 weeks, sometimes it's not, sometimes they flip pretty fast. But yeah, it's okay to do those, especially in early flowering. Oh yeah, hit those thumbs up. Here's a question from the chat. I added too much phosphorus in my Coco Loco. I must minimize dryback to keep them from nutrient burn, I think is what he's asking. Well, the thing about phosphorus is that it's okay to have luxury levels. Typically what will happen is they'll precipitate with things like calcium and magnesium at higher pH ranges, and then they'll actually bind with micronutrients if they're not chelated at lower pH ranges. And so what happens is that nutrient just becomes basically inefficient, and it can cause like lockout. So it can cause lockout with calcium and cause lockout with potassium. Phosphorus is pretty mobile as a nutrient. Phosphate, at least, is an anion, which has a negative charge, so it moves with water really easily. So if you needed to flush out your media and it was just that phosphorus you're trying to remove out of your cocoa, it would be pretty easy to do. But it might also not be, as easy to do if it's like, a modified growing mix, and, if you're relying on what's already in that media for nutrition, because you're going to rinse out more than just phosphorus. If you guys got any questions, just drop them in the chat. We got 88 people watching. Happy New Year's again. And you can get all of our products, Trichoderma and Bacillus, on the website. Everything is available. Humate fertilizers are all stocked up. The Calcil, flower, and veg amendments, they're all on there. I think I saw another comment. Crypto says, I have 2 full spectrum lights indoors. You can you can grow and flower under full spectrum lights. I don't know what happened there. I got disconnected. My internet lost connection for a second. Any opinion on Dr. Earth dry amendments? I'm not really familiar with Dr. Earth dry amendments, to be honest. But I am doing, I have been doing a series on just amendments in general. The last one you can check that out. I did a podcast and Q&A on basalt. And there's a short on there. There's also a free guide on the Full Crop Science website blog, which you can check out. Like, you can learn about what it is, how, what it contains, things to be aware of. Is there a foliar application rate on the spore package? Yeah, so the application rate for the trichoderma and the bacillus is 0.1 of a gram. So you'll need a hundredth of a scale per gallon of water. And there are feed charts. Let me just go over to the website real quick. And and remember, we build feed schedules, but everybody's system is a little bit different, right? And so we encourage people to like play around with it. These are just general recommendations. And again, everybody's system's a little bit different. Everybody grows a little bit different. Everybody's soil has a little bit more nutrition or less nutrition and all that other kind of stuff. So you always have to be aware and think about things holistically. But here is this. I think you can command copy. And I'll put that in the chat right here. Let's see, we got another. Happy New Year. Love the info. Never see you say anything about lactobacillus. We actually do have some podcasts on lactic acid bacteria. Usually when I'm talking about lactic acid bacteria, I'm talking about lactic acid bacteria, fermentive yeast, and photosynthetic bacteria together as a consortium, simply because they work so much more efficiently and effectively as a consortium as any single organism on their own. And so while lactic acid has the benefits that it does from the ability to ferment things and produce that lactic acid bacteria and things like things like folic acid and some beneficial phytohormones and some other different beneficial compounds. They work better as an engine. But I did a podcast on those, on the EM and the Microbial Consortium. Definitely check that out. I think you'll like it if you want to learn a little bit more about that stuff. Here we go. Here's another question from Dustin. Says, when you're starting a run of some new genetics that you want to take clones of because you're doing a hunt, do you take your clones from the main stem or do you wait for side branching to occur to pull? So it really doesn't matter where you take the clones from. If you're in a hurry and you're just like, hey, I want to pop seeds, I want to back everything up, so I'm only going to take one clone, you might just take the main apical meristem, take it from the apical meristem, or from the, that dominant branch. But it doesn't matter really where you're going to take the clone from, as long as it's a nice, healthy clone that roots, it'll contain all the same genetic material. But me, a lot of times what I'll do, especially if I'm doing larger hunts, right? And if I'm trying to do like a fast turnover, what I'll do is I'll pop a bunch of seeds, and you can watch this exact thing on the Brandon Rust Grows YouTube channel. That's where I have like my POV stuff. So what I did is I popped a bunch of different seeds, actually 2 different varieties of seeds. I had them sex tested, right? I got rid of all of the males, all of the females. I'll grow up. I'll take one clone of every single one of those, and I'll keep that aside, and then I'll flip those just to see what, comes out in that line. But it depends. It's really contingent. It doesn't really matter where you take them, like I said before. But if you're like just trying to turn and burn, I'll usually just take one clone right from the top, flip things just to see, hey, is this one good? And then typically what I'll do is I'll take those clones, I'll veg those up, I'll take more clones of those, and then I'll run things back with the clones. Here's another question. Can you mix the Micro Plus with the Bacillus subtilis and Trichoderma together and foliar spray? You can mix all of those things together. No problem. all of our stuff is compatible, cross compatible. So you could mix everything up. Obviously, like one of the things that I recommend, like for me anyway, I like to some people like to just add everything all at once, and that's fine. I like to do like the Micro Plus and the calcium silica together, and then if I'm doing any type of micronutrients or anything, I'll do that with the humic and fulvic acid fertilizer. And the reason why is it gives me more to do, because if I do everything all just at once, then I just basically, looking at plants and there's nothing for me to play around with and stuff. And sometimes I like to do that, but yeah, and you can mix Micro Plus with other fertilizers and other microbes as well. Is the use of CalMag in organic gardening through flower acceptable? I mean, you need calcium and magnesium, but if you're talking about a specific product like CalMag from General Hydroponics or something like that, typically what you're getting is going to be calcium nitrate, right? And they'll add a little bit of Epsom salt, right, which is magnesium sulfate. So you're getting Calnet, which Calnet is just it's synthetic fertilizer, but the problem is you're also bringing in nitrogen, right? So if you're using a CalMag and it's like CalMag, that's what the product is advertised as. Make sure that you're reading it and seeing if it has nitrogen, because if you're using a CalMag product and you're using it in later stages of flowering, you could be bringing in additional nitrogen that is going to reduce the quality of that end product. Now, also another thing to be aware of is a lot of these CalMag products aren't necessarily in the proper ratio of calcium to magnesium. And it's because you might sometimes people will see something like magnesium deficiency and they'll be like, oh, I need CalMag. Well, adding calcium might be the problem to begin with. Like the calcium levels, you might have accidentally pushed them high, or maybe it's not that. It's just that the magnesium levels are low and you just need magnesium, right? And so this is what I would do, right? Instead of using CalMag, right? This is what I would do. There are a couple of products that I recommend for calcium sources, regardless of whether or not you're in a cocoa, if you're in a potting mix, or if you're in a living soil. The calcium silica, Calcil Plus, that I have on my website is great because it has it's got 43%, I think, or 41% calcium. It's got 51% silica. It has 1.7% magnesium. So magnesium isn't super high, so it won't have any negative impact with the calcium, right? It also has a small amount of iron. You could also use gypsum, right? Gypsum is calcium and sulfur. And so you're going to get plenty of calcium. And now if you do if you're like, okay, now I want to bring in my magnesium source, you should use Epsom salt, aka magnesium sulfate. And if you spray your plants at a rate of 1 tablespoon per gallon of water 2 times per week until about the second week of flowering, you'll be able to deliver all the magnesium that they'll really need. If you're having a deficiency still and you're doing those foliar applications, you can add in additional Epsom salt into your media, or something like langbeinite, right? As long as you don't have too much potassium already. Yeah, we ran out of those. Ran out of those with the orders. But I'm waiting for some seed packaging right now. And I have plenty of I've got plenty of the Berry Bad Dog, which is the Chem Dog Blueberry Train Mac, and I might dip into those. You know what I also have that you know what, the next freebies will probably actually be the Bickett OG, that GMO cherry pie. I crossed that to the Black D, the Chem Dog Black Lime Reserve, but I just don't have the time to test it. So those might be the next freebies that just go out. No, we don't have any seeds right now in orders. Let's see. Here is a question from Labsy. He says, "Are healthy looking but small plants likely a result of poor soil structure?" It could be, but it could also be a ton of other things. Soil structure is really important. It's going to determine the holding capacity of water and gas exchange, and a lot. It's going to, it's really important for microbial metabolism and everything else. But just proper nutrition. Improper nutrition, you could, have small plants, or, just genetics, because you're saying they look healthy, but they're small. There could be a lot of different things. All right. Here's another question. Do you start counting the days in flower from the first day of 12 in 12, or the first sign of pistils? Those pistils are called stigma. And I actually count the first day of flowering from when I actually change the light cycle. Or actually, I guess I would count it the second day after I flip is my first day, is because it's the first long night cycle is how I count. Shawnee Max says, "Thanks for..." Says, "Thanks again for doing these. I've learned so much watching them. Question: Have you dabbled in tissue culture at all, or have plans to in the future?" I actually have a whole tissue culture lab. Hold on, let me see. Let me see if I can take you guys for a little virtual tour real quick. I have a tissue culture lab. I've just not really utilized it because of time constraints, and I couldn't really find somebody to work in here. But let me turn the light on. Oh, here we go. All right, so right here we've got, I don't know, a bunch of stuff. Some cleaning supplies. We got some ovens. Look at, we got the this really nice expensive microscope, which actually hooks up to that computer right there. We've got this, which has never been used. I was gonna do mushroom extraction in here for a while, but we've got all our TC stuff. I actually have a bunch of media already made up here. And then we have like our shelves and stuff back there. So yeah, man, I've dabbled. I dabbled enough that I bought a whole lab and then haven't done much with it. All right, let me see if I can fix this thing. There we go. I have a 50-pound bag of gypsum. This is from the chat right here. I've had for like 4 years, barely made a dent in it, and it was only $20. That's the good thing about growing organics with organics, because a lot of the inputs, especially if you're doing like um especially if you're doing things at scale where it makes sense for you to buy like a 50-pound bag of something, like if you're at scale, you can get a lot of the stuff relatively inexpensive. What's that hat? Oh, this is from Pinehurst. It's from the homie. He sent it. I don't have a whole lot of hats that fit my head, and this one just happens to fit. So you have an old pack of Malawi Chem. I did a cross, which was OG Malawi dog, which was original OG cross with the 90s Malawi. And it was just a preservation project that I did because I only had, it was from the late 90s, and there was we only had 3 seeds. So I was like, I had 2 females and 1 male out of it, and I was just like, you know what, let's do it. A couple years ago, they've been gone for a while, but they got good reviews. Look at this here. I like this comment right here. The gas station one says, bro, I got my leaf temps dialed in and not going off ambient temperatures, and my grow exploded. Thanks for the information. Yeah, man, that makes me happy. Happy to hear, man. Here we go. Genetic Memory Farm says, I was looking at purchasing your amendments, but I still have a question. Is there a discount pack that has all 4? And do they all get used at the same rate, or does one go faster? Oh, that's a good question. So yeah, we do have bundle packs. The bundle packs basically, there are, like, if you're just looking for the humates, or if you're looking for the humates, the microbes, the calcil, the humates, the microbes, calcil, and the amendments. And the way that they work is there are some videos, so you can go watch those. And then there's feed schedules. So like the top dress amendments, I recommend those using just once per, growth, cycle. So during veg, you'll do the veg amendment along with like your humate application and your calcil and your microbes and stuff like that. And then when you move into flower, you can top dress the top dress amendment. And so you don't have to, it's like if you buy, let's say like a master bundle pack, and you're growing in some like a 4x4 or 5x5 tent, that pack is going to last probably 3 or 4 cycles, because if you've got the top dress amendments and your microbes and your calcil, and you're not it's not like you have to feed all the time. And if you look at the feed charts, it's like the humates, you're usually only feeding like once every 2 to 4 weeks. Same thing with the microbes. You're only feeding microbes, once every other week, so twice a month. So the thing is, they're very efficient, so you don't have to use a lot of it. I hope that answers your question. But there are some videos that are on the actual channel, and I still need to finish those too, because I was going and I did like a product intro, introduced all the product, when you would use them, kind of how you would use them, and it goes over that. And then like there's a part that just talks about the microbe plus, and then I need to do the follow-up on the rest of that series, but you can watch the ones that are already there. And then also we have a Discord, so let me actually pull that right now. Our Discord has tons of different people in it, and they all grow in different styles, and everybody's pretty much using the full crop science products. And so tons of people in there, myself included. I'm not super crazy active, but I usually post all my stuff. But I've been out of town for a little bit, so I haven't been as active for the last week. But I'll be getting back on there. What are my thoughts on bottom wicking SIP systems? They're great, dude. I love the sub irrigated planters. That's what the SIP is an acronym for. Sub irrigated planter. Autopots are a good example. And I actually have a room. I'm hoping that next month we actually finally get to open up the dispensary and grow. Fingers crossed. And what we have a room in there that is autopot, so it's all sub irrigated planters. So it goes from the resi, it gets bottom fed, and it's a wicking system. So the way that I'll operate that, it'll be different from the other two rooms, which are living soil beds. We're still doing living soil in the autopots, but we're doing it with a cocoa base instead of peat base. That way it holds more oxygen. We want more gas exchange from the bottom wicking system. At least I do for this particular project. And so we're doing a cocoa base soil in that system. And the way that I treat it is I still do top dress, and I still top feed like the humates. But what I'll do is in my reservoir is where I'll put in my my microbes. So I usually put my Micro Plus in the reservoir, and that keeps the reservoir with just good microbes. No anaerobic bad microbes can creep in there, and like Fusarium or anything like that. And also it keeps a lower pH range. And so when we're talking about like the nutrient availability, it can help with the solubilization of a lot of those micronutrients, while the soluble cations from like the base cations, calcium, magnesium, potassium, are like falling into solution from the mineral inputs. It works really well, dude. I love sub irrigated planters. There's tons of people that are also on that Discord channel that use SIPs. Here we go. Here's another question from JW Dicus. I just watered my plants, and there are hundreds of springtails hopping all over the soil. The internet says they are not pests. Am I okay to let it grow? The plants are only a week from chopping. Yeah, it's totally fine. Springtails are pretty normal, especially in like living soil systems or any type of system where you have a lot of organic matter present. And I've seen them get like crazy where they look like a mass, like a moving mass. And they'll eventually just die back, but you want to watch how much organic material and compost you're like adding at one time. But they're usually not going to do anything bad. They're just composting stuff. Yeah, there was a flow hood in that video that I showed. Here's another question from South Florida. Can I send you some fresh? I don't know, what is that? Moringa leaf powder for you to experiment with? I don't know what that is. Let's see. Shaman wants to know about feminizing seeds. Man, I don't do feminized breeding, so it's not really my realm. But as far as the question goes, I don't think you would do anything differently for an older seed variety than you would for a new variety. Secta 501 says he is a DWC grower and he has switched up his nutrient routine listening to the lives. And he says he no longer uses the CalMag inputs and he's implemented the Epsom salt. I hope everything is running well for you still too, because if you already haven't, there is a series. I think I did a three or 4 part series on calcium dynamics. And the first one was on calcium in hydroponics. And I hope that those helped. Even though I do not do really hydroponics, I haven't for a really long time, but I grew in hydro for 11 years before I switched to soil and then eventually to completely organic. Let's see. Exodus Artisan says, I know you just done a website domain transfer and I tried emailing you through your contact page and your server isn't responding and didn't accept the email. Huh. You tried emailing us through the contact page. Okay. We'll have to try to fix that. I appreciate you saying something too, because we want to work out all the bugs on the website and make sure everything works. Full crop science. Would you say that I go through more of the calcium silica than the other dry amendments? Definitely. I definitely use more calcium silica than the other dry amendments. I find myself using it as probably one of my top amendment. And the reason why is because whenever I'm doing testing and I'm testing my beds to re-amend, like calcium is always the thing that gets used up by the plant in like large quantities. And it's because like nitrogen dynamics are a little different. You need more, the larger biomass and this and that, but it goes down and it peters off the further you get into your cycle. And calcium isn't like that. And so the plant's like feeding on calcium the whole way through, even in late stage. And so calcium is like the number one thing that I have to re-amend into my soil. So it's also and since I prefer the calcium silica as a source, those are usually my go-to amendments. I think I'm going to be running my next amendment run. I'm going to be adding some basalt, and then I'm also going to probably add in some gypsum as well. But I'm waiting for my test results back, because I do have some stuff that's vegging, but I want to make sure everything's perfect for flowering. And I want to make sure that I hit the perfect nitrogen levels, because I have a bed right now of only ChemDog, and then the other is ChemDog Black Lime Reserve and the high divorce rate Limelights, and they're all sours, right? And so I want to I have to nail nitrogen levels perfect on these sours to get them like perfect. Here's another question from Raider Nation. He says he used to use Maxi. I think Maxi is kind of like a sea mineral, which I don't really recommend. Like, it's okay to use sea minerals and stuff like that, like C90, for instance, right? But it's really, really important that you don't have high sodium levels, you don't have high chloride levels in either your water or your media. And it's really important that you don't use them in those types of situations where you could like cause more harm than benefit. And then you also say you use Recharge and Lost Coast, I think Plant Therapy. So to replace recharge. I like the microbe. I like Micro Plus. That's really my main microbial consortium. Like the foundational microbes that we have is that Micro Plus, which is a consortium of lactic acid bacteria, Bacillus subtilis. It's got the Saccharomyces fermentive yeast and purple non-sulfur bacteria, which is photosynthetic bacteria. So that's what that would replace. And then as far as like IPM stuff, I don't know a lot about Lost Coast. It's not something that I've used, so I'm not sure. I know a little bit. I think it's got like some essential oils and maybe some alcohol and stuff like that, maybe some citric acid. It seems like a really good, maybe a preventative for integrated pest management. Me personally, I like Suffoil X or the Monterey horticulture oil just because it's so inexpensive, and it's really effective. So it just makes sense from like a logistics standpoint to just use that for me. But the humates, man, they crush outdoors. That's what I would recommend. Getting some humates and some microbes and some cow seal. T-Dog says he microdoses products all season outdoor. Huge, healthy plants instead of one big feed. Yeah. And that's the thing. You can go like the way that I did it this last season was I hit them with just a regular application feed, which was like 30 mils per gallon of water with whatever nutrient for whatever phase of growth. So like during veg, I hit them with the veg formulation. When they were like getting bigger and later into the season, I transitioned to complex, and then when they're flowering, I hit them with the K. But I think I did it about once every 4 or 5 weeks throughout the entire season, and my plants got huge too. They're unruly, dude. I'm not gonna do that again. I think next season, what I'm going to do is early in the season, I'm going to do peppers and tomatoes, and I'm going to grow those probably until like July. And then I'm going to take plants from indoors and just do small plants. That way they only get maybe like 3 feet or 4 feet tall instead of like 14, because it's just too difficult. And the plants get unruly, they get hard to work with when they're 14 feet tall, dude. It's hard to get to like spray them, and it's hard to like bend stuff, and it's hard. It's just hard to like get in there and look at them. Even you gotta have a ladder and all that stuff. What's the best that I've blazed lately? The best that I've blazed lately is the Black D, dude. I hate saying it, but I smoked some Black D this morning. I've got some drying. It's actually, I jarred it up this morning. Or not jarred it up. I toted it up this morning. And I'll trim it in a few days. I'll just, whenever it's ready. But it is ChemDog Cross the Black Lime Reserve. Dude, it's so fantastic. It is like, okay, so it's chem, but it's got just a wonderful sour, citrus sour. So it's like a chem citrus sour, and the flavor on it, though, the flavor is really similar to my sour tropical tangy, to where it has this sour trop flavor on it, which is just amazing. So it's got like, it's interesting because the terpene profile is different from the way it actually tastes, but it actually tastes a little bit like, it tastes like, I don't know. It's great. It's a great one. That's my favorite. I love sours, and I'm super stoked. I'm going to be popping more of those. I've already ran some of those. I ran a big batch group, and then I just ran a small batch group, and I'm running them back because they're all super good. But that, dude, it's sold out. There's no more packs left or available. But for the people that were able to go grab that F1 of that ChemDog Chem D crossed to my BLR that I used for so much other breeding projects. That is a fucking masterpiece, dude. I absolutely love that stuff. And I'm going to be doing some stuff where I'm going to be taking it into Starfighter. I have some F3 Starfighter seeds that I'm going to be working with. The Gorilla Glue is back on its way, and I'm going to be getting back into lime soon. So got to finish up with these, the Blueberry Train Mac project, because dude, I have the number 30 cut that I did out of this last batch group is fucking fantastic. It is absolutely wonderful. I'm going to get that out probably to a couple of people. And I'm doing some testing stuff. I'm testing the Gay Laser, which is the Gay Laser is Sunset Sherbert crossed to Rainbow Belts, right? And then I took that and then crossed that into the Starfighter Mac. And then I have the Blueberry Starliner, which is the Trainwreck Blueberry MK Ultra, grandparent of the Blueberry Train Mac, crossed to the Starfighter Mac. So those are being tested right now. And then I'm also gonna be doing, what's the other ones in there that I have? I have the skunk cut cross to, and the herbal cut of Blueberry Train Mac, both crossed to the Starfighter Mac, which I'm gonna pop some of those, get some cuts out of those. But I will be doing a drop soon. I gotta get some clone supplies on the Black D's. So I have, out of this last batch group, I have two that are like really good standouts. I have one that's drying and I haven't been able to try it out yet, so we'll see. I don't think that one's going to be up to par as these two that I pulled out. And I'm just testing the two on flavor right now. So one of them I know for sure it's just got that tropical, it's like tropical lime peel. It's like, and it's like chem tropical lime peel. And so those will be super limited, but I'll probably be dropping some of those pretty soon. This whole series, we're still going to do the Battle of the Breeders, man. The Battle of the Breeders is not canceled. It's just been postponed because these goddamn politicians or whoever's in charge of licensing and all this stuff, they take their goddamn time, dude. It's almost been a year. We're supposed to open in February. I got to call my partner up and see if he's gotten any updated news. But the Battle of the Breeders will continue. I still have all the seed waiting, man. They're waiting. You got the Bull Rider 89 NL beans. Yeah, those are good ones. A lot of people like those ones, especially older smokers that remember a lot of like the really like kind of hazy terpinolene type of dominant varieties. Do I use anything specifically to clean the res for the auto pots? Usually just when I wash everything, I usually just use bleach and hot water. This is a good question. I like this. It says, for the love of growing, he says, if I wanted to save the 2.5 gallon cocoa pots at our facility, what would be the process once we cut down the plants down? Amendments, question mark. Maybe put them on a shelf for some time. Shelf for some time with some moisture in them. So if you were looking at reusing your media, it would make more sense to just convert over to maybe like a 3 gallon soil pot, to where you could balance out that soil every time using soil analysis. So what you would do in that type of situation would be, once you cut all your plants down, you could take samples randomly throughout your tables and mix that together as one sample and send that off as like room number one. And then you, based off of what you need to add to it, I have a nutrient calculator that I use, that I built, that's on the website, right? And it tells you, oh, you need X amount of this, and this to bring everything up to nutritional sufficiency. So what you would do is you would top dress, you would build your top dress, and you would divide it amongst all of those pots to bring them all up to nutritional sufficiency. And then you could just regrow in that same media every time. Or you could do beds. That's the same. That's what I like the best, is like, especially for like in commercial settings, beds are the best because you can just add a little bit of top dress amendments to those beds to bring them back up to sufficiency. But typically they're like, you're not adding a whole lot. Like, you're really just more or less balancing the nutrients that are already there using data. And that way you never have to buy media and you're never throwing stuff out. And it's like the cleaning process is easier. It's like I was at this one facility. It was massive facility, right? And they were dumping out all of their cocoa. They were taking the pots, they were washing the pots, they're filling the pots back up, and then they were setting everything back up. And I was like, dang, dude, that's crazy. Because with my system, it's just got a bed in there, and that bed and that media never moves. They just cut the plant down at the base. They remove the plant out of that area. They top dress, and then they replant right back into that system, and it's like the maintenance on it and the labor and the waste is just, everything from a logistics standpoint just makes more sense when you use data and you're reusing your media. And it's not even about like, oh, I need to save the planet and stuff. It doesn't have to be about that. It's just, even just from a business standpoint, like being able to cut costs and be really efficient with the things that you have purchased and the inputs that you use, and it just makes it so that way you have, a better bottom line for production. Secta says, you had me going down the rabbit hole with the CalMag. I found out that using Lucas formula, what you get is the calcium needed. You get the calcium needed in the micro. I would be really weary of that, because you still have to look at what that calcium is, because is it calcium nitrate? Is it calcium chloride? Is it, what type of calcium? Because it has to be derived from something. So you have to look at the ingredient, because even if they putting the calcium nitrate along with their EDTA chelated micronutrients and then calling it their micro, it's still calcium nitrate, which might not be the solution that you want, especially in later in flowering. So be aware, dude. You got to know what is actually in the product. I don't know anything about Lucas formula though. I know you've probably answered this 100 times for people, but I'm tired of going over research trying to find the best light for a 2x4 tent for less than, bro, don't even worry about it. Look, you can grow. You can go buy a cheap light and fucking still grow well. This is what I recommend. Just find one that can dim, right? Because the majority of them are advertising like, oh, you can, do this and this. It's just like, dude, you can grow with anything. Like, I used to grow with HPS, metal halide checkerboard. Then I was with CMH. Then I've been under LED. I've grown things under fluorescent, T5 bulbs. I've done it every which way in my experience. It doesn't have to get super fancy, bro. If you just want to spend a little bit of money and get something decent, then you know. Looks like you guys are really going off about this amendment, morning go or whatever it is. Moringa. How much Micro Plus do you use per gallon in your Autopots reservoir? I'm using Southern Ag Gardens friendly fungicide at 1 milliliter per 10 gallon, adding Microbe Plus to the Autopots via top feed every 2 weeks. That's fine. You can do that, but why are you using fungicide? Monday, you mean? Later. Micro Plus 15 to 30 milliliters per gallon of water. But you probably don't need that fungicide, especially if you're using the Micro Plus, man. That's the thing. Like those are beneficial that's a beneficial microbial consortium. So what their job is to outcompete pathogens right in that same space. So they're using the same type of resources and the same type of environment. And so you shouldn't have to use a fungicide. Rusty Nail says he got some Calmino. Yeah, Calmino is a good product. I'm familiar with it. Calmino is calcium chelate amino acid. So it's nitrogen. But remember, again, when we're talking about nitrogen and calcium, dude, that's going to be like for veg. I wouldn't recommend using that later on in flowering. You want to switch to a calcium source that doesn't have nitrogen in it for later in flowering. Here's a question. Does anyone pop seeds with recharge? I pop seeds. My last seed pop that I did, I used the trichoderma and Bacillus subtilis, and they all popped very well. It's a really great way to get them started. And next Tuesday, we'll be doing a podcast on coconut water. And that's actually really awesome biostimulant for seeds. Here's another question from Wizard Adam. He says, would Calcel and the Bodie amendments be wasted in cocoa that's mostly fed mills? I'm going to mix up a living soil going forward, but want to do with my current plants in flower. I think it would be fine, especially if your cocoa's just like inert. Sometimes you can get cocos from the stores like the Royal Gold cocos or some of these Coco Locos, which are cocos that are actually blended with like compost and amendments. So those are more like a potting mix. If you're just in just a regular cocoa and you're using some of the calcium silica, that is great. Calcium silica in anything is going to help stabilize pH. It'll bring that calcium and help with all the other, the silica and all the other stuff. Slow release mineral nutrients from the Bodie. It's not a bad thing either. And so you're kind of looking at like a Synganic program with that. So maybe just cut the mills down slightly. You may not need as much because you will have the available nutrients from those top dress amendments, and especially if you're using it with like microbes. So you could probably cut down the amount of mills or the salt fertilizer that you give and kind of use that as more like a supplement. Yeah, Micro Plus. You can use Micro Plus as well. Dude, there's so much science that if you go to like Google Scholar and you just go to like microbial seed inoculations, there's like all different types of beneficial microbes, labs, trichoderma, bacillus, pseudomonas. So there's all different types of stuff. Oh yeah, all of these things. So Jay Quinn asked, is there anything that you can use in your seed germination water that actually helps the seedling? And that's, so it depends on what you're doing. So if you're trying to sterilize seeds because you're worried about contaminations, you can do hydrogen peroxide. If you want to do things like microbes, mycorrhizal is good. Mycorrhizal is actually shown that like some can like coat the seeds and then establish early during germination. So things like mycorrhiza or trichoderma, bacillus, lactic acid bacteria. Also things like coconut water, aloe vera, even like some kelp extracts. A lot of these have bioactive compounds, amino acids or hormones, antioxidants, things that can just help stimulate growth or provide like trace elements, micronutrients, stuff like that. So a lot of those things can be beneficial, definitely. Yeah, and aloe vera, actually, aloe vera, a lot of kelps, coconut water, they all contain auxins, which are a type of phytohormone. Like indole 3 acetic acid is one that's most commonly known, which is known to help with root elongation, and it's for overall root health. And there's actually a podcast on the same channel for aloe vera, and I talk about aloe vera for a lot of different processes. But anyway, I'm gonna hop off here. Been on here for about an hour. Make sure you guys go check out the website. If you guys have any issues, you can email us at customer service bokashiearthworks.com. And I'll see you guys soon.